What's up, guys? Coach B here, Coach B Stocks. Wanted to do a video about somewhat all the memes, and this is just a theory, but and I should also point out that it's not my theory. Okay, as some of you guys know, if you've been following my channel or my stream, I'm always lurking on superstonk, wallstreetbets, other Reddit forums, and always looking for new information. And I stumbled across a post, I'd say about 4 days ago, by a really intelligent user named Criand, who's always posting great information on GameStop. And then again, another post by ChemaKyle, hope I'm saying that right, on Wall Street Bets. And both posts are kind of all talking about this September 9th futures contract rollover date. So then I went back and started looking through both of them. And again, this is just a theory, but it's one that makes sense to me, and that's why I'm making this video. Okay, I'm thinking that we might see some significant moves in some of these meme stocks upcoming. Basically, what the theory is saying is that all the major movement in these meme stocks have revolved around these specific future contract rollover dates. You know, in March, anyone who was in GameStop like I was, or AMC, knows we saw some significant spikes there. And then in June, AMC had that really huge spike, run up to like 70 something. GameStop saw a spike, CLOV saw a spike, KOSS, along with a bunch of other meme stocks. So there's another date upcoming in September, and I'm going to try to break that down right now. But before we look at the charts, I want to explain what the theory is behind this, why futures contracts might be playing a role in these large spikes in meme stocks, and some other stuff. So it really all goes back to the concept of these meme stock baskets, right? I know I've mentioned it on my stream in the past when people have said, hey, why is CLOV look like it's always spiking and going up and down the same as AMC? Or on other days, we've noticed that AMC and GameStop trade the same. And I mean, if you put all of these charts, these daily charts side by side, they really follow similar patterns. Sometimes they diverge from each other, but for the most part, they seem to move together. Why? Well, like I said, I think as far back as February, I don't know if it was in the GME subreddit or the superstonk subreddit. Basically, someone had pointed out, a user on one of the subreddits had pointed out that there were these ETFs, these equity indexes, created that carried heavy proportions of meme stocks. And these ETFs were possibly being shorted alongside the stocks, and that explained the synchronous movements between the stocks, right? If you're shorting a basket of stocks that you want to short and you're just shorting that ETF or that equity index, you're going to drive down the price of all of them altogether. When you cover, you're going to drive the price up altogether. So anyone who's been following since January, I'm sure has noticed that at times, almost all of them run together, dip together, trade flat together, and it's been happening in cycles. Okay, so now that we have that theory out of the way, the second part is with the future contracts. Basically, a futures contract is similar to an options contract, except futures contracts require the buyer to purchase the shares when the contract expires. Okay, and you can get futures contracts on equity indexes or these baskets of meme stocks. Okay, so if you're following me so far, basically we're going off the premise that there are equity indexes out there containing meme stocks, and there are future contracts on these equity indexes. Now, when you buy a futures contract and the contract comes up for expiration, if you don't want to purchase the shares, you can roll your contracts out to the next quarter, essentially closing the contract out and then buying a new one, extending the liability. So what the hell does this all mean, right? Okay, let's get to the juicy part. And again, these aren't my findings. Credit goes where it's due. I've linked the Reddit post by Criand and Kim below, but here it is. Let me pull up this chart. Let's take a look at these dates. March 19th expiration, okay. Rollout date of March 11th, meaning if your contract was going to expire on the 19th, you'd have to roll it out by the 11th, okay. June 18th with the rollout date of June 10th. Same thing. If your contract's expiring on the 18th, you would want to roll it out before the 10th. Keep in mind, these can be rolled out well ahead too, like a week ahead, 2 weeks ahead, whenever. So what's our next date? September 17th expiration, rollout date September 9th. Okay, so now that we've gotten past that, remember these dates. Okay, the 11th of March, the 10th of June, and again the 9th of September. Let's go take a look at some charts. So first up, I pulled up GameStop, really kind of the OG in here, right? Started climbing. Let's zoom in a little bit here. So, everybody knows about the big run up in January. It fell down, it kind of flattened out somewhere around here in the $40 range. But let's really zoom in on this, okay? So, right around February 24th, GameStop really started gaining some traction, started moving a little bit, really getting, day after day climbing, and then topped out right around March 10th and really got its biggest movement within the 3 days prior to the March rollout date of, March 11th. Okay. So again, started moving probably about 2 weeks prior, really started gaining momentum in the days leading up to it, but hit its peak right around there. Okay. Next, we'll look at, and again, we're just going over March right now. Let's take a look at AMC, and I'm going to zoom in on the same exact thing. This is AMC's big run up in in January, right? And then everyone knows what happened here in June. But let's get to March first. Okay, so let's look at March. Kind of around the same time, basically 2 weeks before the rollout day. AMC started to gain some traction, moving up, came down, and then right here in that like 3 days prior to the rollout day of March 10th is when it got its biggest movement. And then it actually kept running and continued to run a little bit after that. I remember at the time there being a lot of hype around Triple Witching Day, and I think AMC just continued to have the retail momentum that carried it. But we got this big move right here, right before, and even again starting a couple weeks prior, right before that March 10th date, that March 11th date. Okay, so another big mover in March, KOSS, again popped in January. If we zoom in here to kind of the same time frame, you could see KOSS started to spike around the same time in February 24th, about 2 weeks prior. It fell down a little, but again, a lot of action 3 days prior to that March 11th date, hitting its peak at March 10th. Okay, so let's take a look at June. Okay, so the expiration date in June was June 18th, with the rollout date of June 10th. All right, and we're going to go to GameStop first. So there's our kind of like late February, early March. Now we're going to come into here and take a look at GameStop's run up in that early June phase. So GME actually started moving a little bit ahead, almost 2.5 weeks ahead this time. You could really start to see the momentum building down here, but we really start getting that right around May 24th. It starts popping up, continues to run up, and hits its peak somewhere around June 8th. Okay, which is 2 days before the rollout date of June 10th. And then if we go ahead and check out AMC, this was the big run. Look around the May 24th date when GameStop started. We see the same price action. We see this thing moving up. And then it actually spiked a lot sooner on June 2nd, hitting its peak of 72. But I really think the difference there was, from what I recall, AMC had an insane amount of open interest on the options chain. And so during this run up, as it was coming up to that June 10th date, I think it just kind of hit a little gamma squeeze in between there and really saw its price action take off ahead of time. Okay, we look at Blackberry. Come over here to June. Again, same momentum. May 24th, we start to see the run up. Spike hit its top right around June 3rd. So these all aren't hitting their peaks at the same time, but they're all hitting run ups right around the same time. So now if we look at CLOV, and I'm mixing CLOV in here because CLOV really wasn't considered a meme stock, I wouldn't say, back in January, but then it started getting shorted to shit after that and kind of got that meme reputation and mixed in there. And sure enough, if we zoom in on June for CLOV, we start that same type of run up right here in May 24th. We start creeping up. And much like AMC this time, CLOV ended up having a ton of open interest, which ended up kicking off a gamma squeeze. And that's what we saw here, which ended up sending it up to 28, which is why we saw the huge increase in CLOV at the time. So, and also the one thing I'll mention about CLOV, and those of you guys that maybe are watching this video and don't know, I'm heavy into CLOV and GameStop, so I'm not as knowledgeable in all the other stocks. But at the time back in May, CLOV had huge potential for a gamma squeeze at the time. It didn't hit it. And then, it was kind of like, okay, well, let's have to see what happens with the options chain now. And then all of a sudden, the options chain for June 19th got really loaded up. And again, we hit this gamma squeeze. Kind of a similar scenario to what we're in right now. August 20th, a couple days away. Huge potential for a gamma squeeze. Doesn't really look promising right now, like we're actually going to hit it this week, but still a ton of open interest left on the option chain moving forward. We do have the potential for the gamma squeeze there. All right, so based off this information or this theory, how do we use it? What does it mean? Well, for one, it's just a theory. I believe it. The numbers look to add up. It seems like they all started moving at the same time. This theory would explain why. It seems like the dates all line up. Essentially, the theory is saying that the weeks running up to these rollover dates, we're going to start seeing movement in these stocks as future contracts on these equity baskets containing the memes are going to get closed out and reopened. That causes buying pressure in the market and is going to cause some price spikes. So as I look through every meme I could think of, I didn't notice the same patterns on every date. Why? Potentially, the short interest could have died down in some. There were some of these stocks that spiked back in January that didn't end up running up in March, but maybe they ran up in June. There were some that ran up in March, didn't run up in June. Like I said, maybe the short interest died down on some. I know CLOV didn't have a ton of short interest going into March, which would be an explanation there. But now it's been pretty heavily manipulated with insane amounts of FTD reported in the month of July. So I'd imagine if I had to pick three, there'll be some big spikes coming on CLOV, on AMC, and on GameStop. If you're following any other potential meme stocks, check the charts. See if they're spiking around those similar times that I just went over. If they are, look for a spike, basically coming from now leading up to September 9th. So how am I going to play it? And again, this isn't financial advice. The big three, in my opinion, are the ones I just named. I already have a major position in GameStop. I already have a major position in CLOV. So for me, I'm going to let those ride, and I'm going to be loading up on some AMC calls right now. I'll probably add a little more GameStop and CLOV too. But I'm targeting early October expirations. I want to make sure I get them now so that I'm in case this thing starts moving a little bit earlier. And I also want to make sure that I'm in case it's a little bit delayed. What if these spikes end up starting the day before the rollouts and then roll out a little bit further? I have no idea. So I'm targeting October. Obviously I still have my shares in CLOV, my shares in GameStop, but I am going to load up on some call contracts because this theory makes sense to me. It makes sense. It lines up. It could be nothing, or it could be something huge. Again, keep in mind, this is only a theory. Nothing's concrete. Nothing's guaranteed. Looking through the options chain, though, it appears that the open interest in CLOV, like I said, is still going to be primed for a gamma squeeze after this week's expiration. I didn't have time to really look through. I see that AMC is really loaded up for this week for a gamma squeeze, leading into the 20th. I don't know about the future. Same thing with GameStop. I just know CLOV because I've been covering it every morning. So I think that, CLOV definitely is going to have the potential to maybe have that higher move to push through the options chain, and probably the same thing I'm going to be banking on happening with AMC and GameStop as well. Either way, again, just information. Do with it what you will. If you enjoy the content, please hit the like and subscribe button. I cover CLOV. I cover other stocks at times, other swing trades I want to get into. I also do these chalk talk videos where I break things down and explain things in simpler terms. Other market terminology. Also, I'm getting into explaining how options contract works for beginners, and I'll start getting into strategies at some point as well. I also live stream every morning. For the most part, I try to get on about a half hour before the market opens, but sometimes I end up getting on about an hour to an hour and a half before the market opens. So pretty much catch me every morning talking stocks with Coach B in the pre-market. If you turn on the bell notification, you'll get notified as soon as I go live. Thank you. Hope to see you tomorrow morning.